All right, guys, welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today we're on episode 75. I'm kind of digging into the archives on this episode, and I'm breaking out a new concept. I basically wanted to combine the idea of 80s remixes and progressive house. I'm really into 80s music. I made an 80s episode. I'll give you a link down below if you want to check that out. Some of my favorite 80s tracks that I have. And obviously I love progressive house. I've done progressive house episodes as well. So I thought, how about I make a progressive house episode that basically highlights tracks from the 80s that were remade into something that was really interesting in the progressive house scene. So that's going to be the criteria for my video today. I have 5 picks for you spanning all the way across the 80s, and I hope you enjoy these. The first pick I have for you is from a mega 80s artist, obviously Prince, rest in peace. I'm really sorry that he's gone. And here we have Prince and his 1984 hit, When Doves Cry. Now, this is a remix by Bill Hammill and Matt Fitzpatrick. I was doing a little bit of digging around. Bill Hammill, he was a progressive house producer / house producer, I would say. He started making music in the mid to late 90s, and I remember him putting out music probably as recently as 2006, and I kind of lost tabs on him. But I found out, unfortunately, that in 2018 he passed away. I didn't know that. That was kind of a bummer when I read that on Discogs. I kind of missed the boat on his passing. But he was always really talented. A couple of his bedrock records are pretty dark and nasty. And I always when I saw Bill Hammill's name on a record, I was like, that's probably an underappreciated record. He kind of had that flying under the radar vibe. He was an American producer. I think he was just from kind of the middle of Florida, nowhere in particular. And he just cranked out really good progressive house tunes in the early 2000s. This is on the label RR1000. Some of you older collectors like me might remember this label. RR1000, RR stands for Release Records. And it's basically a bootleg, white label concept that is organized, right? So they had probably 15, 20 releases. The 1000 stands for 1000 pressed. So they basically, if you read the Discogs notes on these, it'll say 1000 copies pressed, limited to 1000. I seriously doubt that they pressed 1000 of any of the records that came out on this label. Maybe 300 or 400 I could see, but there's no way that there were 1000 pressed. You don't need 1000 of them because it wasn't really that popular to begin with. So they would basically take pop artists like U2 and Sinead O'Connor, Prince, right, and a whole slew of others, and put progressive house, dark twisted progressive house remix touches on them. And that was about from maybe 2000 to 2004, and then the label kind of stopped doing what it was doing. Here Bill Hammill took Prince, the iconic Prince track When Doves Cry, which came out in 1984. When I think of Prince's catalog and I think of his sound, there's the drums, just forget the vocals that are in When Doves Cry, which is a great vocal. But if you just listen to the instrumental track of that, that's quintessential Prince right there. Just the way that those drums are laid out, it's a very obvious drum machine type of track. And it's just sick. It's just a sick beat. And Bill Hammill took those drums and kind of sped them up a little bit and fit them into this progressive house mold. Not really adding too much, basically preserving the integrity of the original vocal and, adding a progressive house bass line and some effects. But he did a great job of keeping the original intact. And I think this is a great track. I actually got to play this at a gig and I got a really good response from it. I can't remember which side I play. I think I play the whatever side this is. I don't know if this is the dub or the vocal, but there is a drop in it where it basically just has this momentum that just comes rolling through, and the drums just start hitting really fast and busy. Really, really top-notch stuff, and hopefully you can still buy this. I'm not sure. This might be one of those Discogs releases that got banned in the sweep where they came through and they tried to get rid of all their bootlegs to increase the integrity of the marketplace. I'm not sure. This one might have got caught in that net. Maybe not. I don't know. But definitely worth grabbing if you guys can find it. Next up is a remix of Dirty Cash. Now, I said this is an 80s episode. The original Dirty Cash came out in 1989, so it's like a buzzer beater in terms of being an 80s tune, but it is an 80s tune. The original Dirty Cash was by Adventures of Stevie V, Stevie B, or no, it's either Stevie V or Stevie B. I can't remember. But it's basically a quartet from the UK, and their breakout hit that everybody's familiar with is The Money Talks, Dirty Cash I Want You, Dirty Cash I Need You. It's the vocals are written from a very dark place, like a girl that's willing to do anything for money type of thing. So, I guess you can apply your own interpretation to that if you want to. But here, Massey and Mello came and did a really nice remix on this. If you guys remember, Massey and Mello I think they're from Jersey. They're definitely American producers, and they were a duo that was making progressive house in the early 2000s. And here they kind of appeared on this white label called Mischief. You can see it's Mischief 01. And you can still buy this one. And it's a really low-key, dark, progressive house tune. And like I said, the vocal for Money Talks, Dirty Cash is a dark vocal. So it was very obvious, I think, to take this and make it into like a clubbed-out track. Now, I think this might have got played at Sound Factory. I think Jonathan Peters might have been playing this at some point. This came out in 2003, maybe 2002. And there's a really cool breakdown in it. I do remember, the breakdown in this, it's very subdued. It goes to a low level where it's just the catchy percussion hitting, and it stays in that state for maybe a minute or two, and I love that. Like, to me, that sound, that like, I'm gonna drop the kick out and just let this, like, dirty percussion roll for a couple minutes, like, man, that was kind of like the Sound Factory vibe. So I really wouldn't be surprised if this was played at Sound Factory. I wasn't there to like confirm that it was or wasn't, but I'm gonna say that my hunch is correct and that this definitely was a Sound Factory jam. Money talks, money talks. Dirty cash, I want you. Dirty cash, I need you. My next pick is another 1989 buzzer beater, and the original for this was Technotronic. Now, if you guys remember, late 80s, Technotronic came out with Pump Up the Jam, and on the same album they had Move This. You gotta move this. You guys remember that. Their breakout album, like, totally blew up, and I thought the original Pump Up the Jam was always a great track. It had a huge kick, and it had very busy percussion that like made it like very club friendly. It was like a little bit slower than your average club tempo, but it was like a very obvious crossover between radio and club. So I'm not surprised at all that this got remixed. Now, this got remixed on this label, Fire 999, another sort of, we're only gonna press 1,000 of them concept. And Fire 999 was known for only pressing single-sided kind of remixes and bootlegs, similar to RR 1000 that I just showed you earlier. Astro and Glide came and did, or Astro Glide, also known as Astro and Glide. I think their names were Gabriel and James or something like that. They were a duo, kind of like obscure, but sort of in the early 2000s progressive scene from maybe 2000 to 2005. They had a release on Bedrock called Aimless Dame that was actually really good. So very talented producers here. They came and did a retouch on Pump Up the Jam. This was definitely played at Sound Factory. I remember that people were talking about this version of Pump Up the Jam being played. It's super techy. Like, this is really obvious Sound Factory material, really thumpy, heavy, techy. And really the semblance that it has to the original Pump Up the Jam is the percussion that I like, and the kind of like riding synth, I guess, that's in the background, like the hooky synth. It lays low in this version of it. Like, it's kind of at a low volume, but it's kind of hiding in the background, making you remember, like, oh yeah, this is definitely Pump Up the Jam. My fourth pick is a remake of the artist Talk Talk. Now, if you remember, Talk Talk in 1984 had one of their hits. It was called Such a Shame. And here we have Deformation. Deformation's a tribal producer. His name's Dimas. He's from Spain. He used to make really good tribal house. He actually still does produce, but he doesn't release on vinyl anymore. So, like, kind of for me, he's off my radar because I only really mess with vinyl. But here he made his Such a Shame kind of bootleg remix. This is unofficial. And he basically took the original version of Talk Talk Such a Shame, grabbed the first maybe 30 seconds of the vocal, and used that to make a remix. And the drums in this hit real hard. This is like straight up peak hour tribal house material. But I love this. When this crescendos and drops, if you were standing in the right place in a big room back in the day, this would really just like blow the place up. This is nuts. And my fifth and last pick for today is from the progressive rock band Yes. Obviously, if you guys remember the Max Graham remix of Owner of a Lonely Heart, oh my gosh. I still sometimes go back and watch the video for Max's remix on this. If you remember, the video was two kids getting dropped off for private school. They kind of duck out of school and they host these fake model auditions where they have all these girls trying out for a modeling gig that doesn't exist. It's just such a clever concept. So they're basically like having these girls audition and making them think that they're gonna get this modeling gig, and then at the end of the day they just go back and get picked up by their mom at the school. It's just such a great, it's such a like a fun kind of entertaining, interesting video. I always loved it, and I equally love this track. I not only do I play this in my DJ sets, but I have this in the car. I listen to it in the summertime a lot. It's just a great remake, and Max Graham just put some really nasty bass lines in here, and I think the bass lines like the real hook on top of like the original vocal, but really just incredible. I know it's a little bit cheesy and a little bit commercial, but I had to give it a nod because this is my 80s progressive episode. That's all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned. I'm going to do another 80s episode and just focus on house instead of progressive house. I don't know when I'm going to do that. We'll see in the future. But that's all for this week. Take care and be safe. Peace.